Hey folks, Brendan here from Bluelight. Now, if you're in the police promotion process, it's highly likely at your board for PC to sergeant or sergeant to inspector or even chief inspector to superintendent that you might well get asked a question about ethics. How you're going to, in the future, as a sergeant, as an inspector, whatever rank, introduce or ensure a culture where ethical decisions are made or an ethical culture is developed. Now, these are sort of common forward-facing questions, and I think they're going to get even more popular. Why? Well, that suggests that policing in the United Kingdom is a little bit of a crisis situation in respect of how the public view the police. Now, I believe that generally the police are viewed as being virtuous and ethical and that they do a good job. However, over the past year or so, there's been a number of crisis points, various protests that have gone a little bit pear-shaped. Stop and search is subject of a huge amount of debate at this moment in time. Internally within the police, especially the Met Police, which always seems to take the biggest hit, my guess is it's the biggest force and it's the capital, so it's under more scrutiny. But there's all of the misogynistic, sexist and racist behaviour that came out of Charing Cross Police Station. And then there's Child Q and so many other examples of where from the outside in it would look like the police aren't acting ethically. And so one of the things that we've been discussing very recently in my weekly workshops, these are the ones that I hold for members of the In-Force Advancement Group. These are police officers, serving police officers who are looking to succeed in specialist interviews, in promotion boards, in transfer interviews. You can check the links below and you'll find the guidance that's going to take you to a link for that group. It's £9.99 to join for a 3-month subscription. 3 months for £9.99. That's the price of a coffee every month to help you succeed in your promotion board. Good value, I'd suggest, but hey, I'll let you be the decider of that. Because if you don't like it, within 24 hours, you can just say, hey, I don't like it. You can have a refund, please, and you get a refund. So anyway, one of the things that we've been discussing is decision-making, but not just decision-making, but ethical decision-making. Now, I know what you're going to say, that in the Code of Ethics, the national decision model is explained, and right at the heart of it is the Code of Ethics, and we consider the Code of Ethics in everything we do. Well, do you really? Do you really consider the Code of Ethics in a great amount of detail? I'm not sure whether that's actually the case. In all the guidance in the College of Policing and the Code of Ethics and the Supervisor's Guidance, there's not much actually there in terms of practical guidance as to how you would go about ensuring that your decisions are ethical ones. And so I put this guidance together. There's going to be several videos that come after this, and those videos will be in the In-Force Advancement Group for you to take a look at. But they cover a variety of different tests, if you like, tests that you can apply to your decision-making process. Now, this isn't about, shall I decide to stop and search this person, or shall I decide to make an arrest? No, I'm not going to cover that, because those are sort of very immediate type concerns. But the ones that are going to take you more than 5 to 10 minutes, or sometimes you might have to deliberate over days in terms of making a decision. So the more long-term things, or the things, actually I'm going to put one into an example if I can, with a client from yesterday. We were talking about one of the questions that he's expecting for a specialist interview, which is, please can you tell me about a time when you've had to analyse information from a range of sources in order to make a difficult decision. Now, in a really good example of a domestic violence incident that he attended, but the domestic violence incident was historic, as in it happened a day or two before. It was a couple, both of them just happened to be Ukrainian, which added another interesting element to it. I'm not going to say which force, because I don't want to identify the individuals or the individual police officer. But one of the things that we thought might add the edge to his answer was not just talking about analysing information in order to make a decision, but we thought what might be interesting is if we add the sort of ethical decision-making process he went through. And so we started off with something called decision discomfort. And I love this phrase because Most of the decision making that you make as a police officer is going to be according to policy, according to guidance, and there's so much of it out there that actually I would suggest they're not even really decisions. Several of my clients, when we've been practicing, have told me about various incidents they've been to where they've made decisions, but one of the actual question posed is a time when you've had to make a difficult or challenging decision. And all of the decisions made were according to policy, according to guidance produced by the force, or according to the law. So they're not really difficult decisions. And so what we chose was a decision where he'd gone outside of policy and outside of guidance. Now, the National Decision Model Code of Ethics tells us we can do this if we have a rationale for doing so. There's a famous line from the film Reach for the Skies with it's a story of Douglas Bader, the World War II Spitfire flying ace. And there's a line in there from his senior officer where he talks about how policy is for the guidance of wise men and the adherence of fools. And I love that phrase. I've used that throughout my career because guidance and policy is there to do exactly that. It's there to guide us. It's not there for us to rigidly follow. And you had this decision discomfort because the policy and the guidance said that what should happen is that one of them should be removed from the address or preferably arrested. Now, that caused him an amount of decision discomfort, because what he said was it just didn't feel like the right thing to do. Now, a good answer at an interview would be expanding on that, why it didn't seem like a good thing to do, why it didn't seem like the right thing to do. And so we looked at this sort of test here as to whether, first of all, do I feel obligated to do something about this? Well, he did, because he'd been sent to it and there was an expectation from the caller that something would happen. There'd be some kind of positive action that would come out of it. The guidance and the policy, well, what did that say? Well, the guidance from his supervisor was that, yeah, one of them should be arrested. It's clear that there's been a domestic violence incident, there's been an assault, someone needs to be held to account for it. And you can't say the 6 of one and half dozen of the other, because invariably that, well, I suppose it does happen, but most of the time it's sort of 10 of one and 2 of the other, or 8 of one and 4 of the other. Well, the person who's 10 or 8 generally comes in when you've got a policy like this. And then you refer to the policy. The force policy was always about making some form of arrest or having one of the partners removed. Now, for a variety of different reasons, I'm not going to go into them because it would take too long, and you know, it's this individual's answer, and there's an element of confidentiality about it. But he also then went one step further and looked at the codes of practice. So we took a look at Code G, and what Code G said in terms of the necessity principles, the necessity rules for making an arrest, and none of them fitted. They just didn't fit. And then legally, you know, he had a power to arrest. However, when he matched it against the code of practice, which is the law as well, I suppose you could say it's the law as well. Well, it is the law as well. I can't say suppose it is the law, but it's a code of practice, and Code G makes it clear the conditions which need to exist for the arrest to be necessary. And if we look at the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, all the way back in 1984 when it was being discussed, I think it was the politician Douglas Hurd who said that an arrest shouldn't just be something which is convenient to do so. It should only make an arrest when it is absolutely necessary. And so this was where the sort of ethics came in. We started introducing more and more ethics. I'll go into these tests in more detail in the videos that follow. But he'd already got grounds not to make an arrest from the code of practice, but then we expanded on that and we looked at other tests that we could apply in that scenario. Tests that you could apply if you were thinking about how to manage a protest, or how to manage something that's going to happen, involves a number of people, that could go either way. Or in terms of developing a policy or guidance, in terms of, if we just look at child Q, you know, a stop and search in a school, or police involvement in schools. I think that needs some policy and guidance, if it doesn't exist already. In developing it, how we're going to ensure that the decision-making process that we introduce into that policy and guidance is ethical in its nature. And this is where we introduce these tests. So the first one is we take a look at the consequences of your decision versus your intentions. And they're two really different things. Secondly, the neighbour test. I love this one. Very basically, if the people involved were your neighbours, would your decision be different? Presuming you like your neighbours, and you want them to like you, would your decision be any different? There's the ethical state of being test, a test of how virtuous you are in your decision and the extent to which you'll be seen as a role model as a result of that. And I'll go into these in a lot more detail one by one in the videos that follow for the members of the Enforced Advancement Group. The fair and just test is one that I really love. Code G contains 4 absolute gems, not about the necessity test for an arrest, but gems in terms of, in the first paragraph, I'll let you into a little, it's one I particularly love. It's an amendment that came in 2012 into the Police and Criminal Evidence Act for Code G. 2012, this is like over 2 decades after the Police and Criminal Evidence Act was introduced. And it puts an amendment in there to say how you should treat someone when they are arrested. And so what it makes clear, and this is legislation, is that when you arrest a suspect for an offence, you must treat them in 4 ways: with respect, responsibly, fairly, and without unlawful discrimination. So with respect, responsibly, fairly, and without unlawful discrimination. Now, I find this particularly interesting because it's the only legislation I'm aware of where it tells you not to do something that's already unlawful. So it's like unlawful discrimination. It's already unlawful, but please don't do it. No, we're telling you now, definitely don't do unlawful discrimination. Now, I think we can apply the fair and just test to that, but I've added 2 more as well, compassion and courage. So I'll talk to you in that video about how you'd apply that test. The 10 peopleometer, absolutely awesome. It has floored so many people, the 10 peopleometer, over my years in policing. And then there's one I picked up from the film World War Z, World War Z, depending on whether you believe in the American pronunciation or the British pronunciation. Anyway, Brad Pitt, whilst he's fighting the zombies, I won't do any spoilers in case you haven't seen that film. It's several years old now, but still an awesome film. There's part of that where the 10th man test is introduced. I put it in inverted commas because equally it could be the 10th woman, but the 10th man test. And I think that's a really, really good way of managing decision making when you are in a group, especially when you're in a group. And this is important because there's so many police officers have made representations over the years that they're just not listened to or consulted. Or if they are consulted, it's via lip service. The Home Affairs Select Committee several years ago put a report out about police recruitment and retention. That's the Government Home Affairs Select Committee, in case you don't follow them. And one of the comments made to the people who were putting together that report by several serving police officers was that things like, I've been in the police for 3 years now, no one has ever asked my opinion. No one has ever asked my opinion about anything. So I think there's something there that you can, and actually the same report talks about the Borg from Star Trek. It's the only time I've ever seen the Borg referred to in any policing document. If you watch Star Trek, you know that resistance is futile in respect of the Borg, but it talked about how police officers joining come with all sorts of ideas, all sorts of opinions, all sorts of promise of change, of being able to influence change. And then before long, it's like the Borg. They find that resistance is futile and they just need to subsume to the police culture and become as one and never speak out aloud, never offer an opinion, never stick your head above the parapet. Hey, nothing will ever change. If everyone is agreeing with the boss, then what's the point of all the people who are below the boss in terms of rank, who are just agreeing with them? And so the 10th man test is awesome because it actually gives permission to the 10th man, in inverted commas, to enhance the ethical decision making of the group and the leader. The last one that we're going to look at is the decision discomfort test in more detail, using a concept called motivational interviewing, which looks at how you feel about things on a scale of 1 to 10, and then what you can do after to improve things. So there you go, folks. I'm not suggesting that for those of you in the Enforced Advancement group, please do watch the videos. I'd welcome your feedback, and welcome your feedback from anyone who's watching this. I'm not suggesting that you apply every one of those for any decision, but it's a bit of a toolkit that I'm providing for you, because I just don't see that much of a toolkit in terms of ethical decision making out there. And I think it's one that you'd find, a set of tools that you'd find really, really useful. And you could choose to use 1 or 2 of them depending on the circumstances. So folks, hope you found that useful. I had hoped this would be a short video, but it's not. I've probably explained more than I was intending to, but hey, that's not a problem, is it? Anyway, you want to find out more about the Enforced Advancement group, good few hundred people in it now, which is pretty awesome. It's only been up and running for about 9 months. So very pleased with its progress, very pleased with the results that are coming out of it. We've had lots and lots of really good results, which invariably is people getting promoted or getting a specialist interview, passing it and getting a job. That's what we're after. Enhancing and developing your career and giving you the opportunity to do so, and meet people from different forces from all over the United Kingdom, as well as the island of Ireland. We've had people from Ireland and also from the United States. He's not appeared yet on any of the webinars, but I know he's a member of the group, so that's pretty awesome too. All right, I'll catch you soon, folks. Stay well, look after each other. I'll speak to you soon.